Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is Thursday, the 7th of April 2022, and it's wonderful to see you here today. Now, today's guest is the United Kingdom's #1 business psychologist, author and expert in reducing stress. For more than 29 years, she has coached, trained, and impacted thousands of professionals on the topic of emotional management. And today she's going to share with you new insights, ideas, and information to eliminate stress. So please welcome our good friend, Sue Firth. Welcome.
Thank you.
We've been blessed with a rock star today.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. It's really so nice when you get put on a pedestal like that. The only trouble is I've got to live up to it now, Daniel. Thanks.
Well, I'm sure you'll live up to it, and I'm sure you'll exceed all expectations. Now, you're based in the United Kingdom. You're working with businesses. You're working with serious professionals. When you start to work with your clients, what's that problem you're helping them solve, or what's the problem you're helping them overcome as a business psychologist?
Thank you for asking. I don't think they necessarily recognize it as stress, but it comes under the umbrella or heading of stress. And it's often something that's holding them back. It's getting in the way because they're carrying it possibly from their past, or they've reached a natural crossroads and they want to be able to go over, but they don't know which direction to take. Maybe there are too many options, so they're getting overwhelmed. And I think inherently they're carrying something that might be a bit negative about themselves or certainly about their past, and it gets in the way. So I often find they'll rock up with one problem, but actually the underlying one is far more of significance. And when we get to that and solve that, they often get a clearer plan. And if I may add one last thing, it's the lack of action or the lack of knowing what to do that I often seem to be the conduit to help them work out. So that next step helps them feel more in control.
I say with my clients, a lot of people wake up feeling stuck and they don't know what to do next. And they say, I'm stuck. I just don't know what to do. So if your client was to wake up and their problem was at the forefront of their mind, what would they say to themselves? How do they describe their problem?
Usually with executives, they form all sorts of language around it that wraps it up in a pretty package and doesn't quite say it how it is. So they don't usually say, I feel rubbish or I don't know what to do. But they might say, I'm finding myself getting too angry. I'm finding myself feeling disappointed. So they'll talk and possibly with an emotion, and it's slightly different between the sexes. They're unlikely to suss that they've got imposter syndrome or that there's a bigger thing. They just don't know. So they'll maybe use the language of, I don't know quite what the problem is, but I know something's not right. That's the place to start.
The impact, you mentioned there, this imposter syndrome. This is something that I hear over and over again. My clients mention it, they mention it in their trainings, but I still think a lot of people are trying to figure out what imposter syndrome is. And
yes,
what is it, and how does it impact them personally, and how does it impact them professionally, that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Again, it's fear. It's basically a fear. I do find it slightly different between the sexes, but this is just a generalization. I would say that where men are concerned, they're often fearing failure. So there's something about their circumstances right now, or again, the legacy of a problem that they're carrying, possibly a view of themselves in the past. And their view of that is so negative that they're fearful that they're not going to be a success, or that their success will get taken from them and that they will actually fail. Where women are concerned, of course, they may have a sense of that, but it's more likely that it's mixed up with self-worth, maybe self-esteem. They are not quite certain whether other people are valuing them enough. And instead of recognizing, right, there's a gap between what I've got and what I want now, let's work out an action to break through that, which is what my answer would be. They come with a label, and then they feel that they've told me that. And that's in a way what I take as a given and then start breaking it down.
I had that feeling of being an imposter last Monday night. I was doing my Unleashed Masterclass and I was telling my story. And I thought, I went through these learning disabilities. I went through these physical disabilities. 6 guys tried to kill me. I bounced back. I had great success. And now I'm here today. And it seems like some of those problems were so far away. And as I started to tell the story, I thought to myself, do I deserve to be here? Is this for real? Did it actually happen?
Whereas my answer, Daniel, is those are irrelevant now. And I say that very respectfully. They are part of your past. They form your story. They're part of your journey, but they do not define the person you are now. Your future is not defined by the person you were in the past. It's defined by the choices you make now. And you and I are making different choices now than we were doing. So we're not the same person as that person and all those things that happened back then. But also circumstances that happen to us aren't necessarily attracted in such a way that we're conscious, nor that we deserve them. So wrapping your do I deserve my position now into something that happened 20 or 25 or 30 years ago doesn't make any sense. Same, if I may, with a teacher saying something rubbish to you. Well, you're rubbish, or you're not good enough, or you'll never get anywhere in life. My expression or my reaction to that is, okay, and I'll put this politely. Whatever you said about me then is the person I was then, but that is not the person I am now. And that's the same as you and I both think going forward. We root our future in positive choices and positive perceptions and views of ourselves going from now. And you can start right now.
It's such an interesting feeling. For me, I could feel myself, I was in my webinar, but then I was like, oh, this story. And that's how I became aware of it. And I went, no, I am where I am because of hard work and great decisions. And that was the past. But it just didn't feel real for me. It's like, gee whiz, that happened and I'm here. And it feels like that gap. Now, with this imposter syndrome, if people fail to act on it, we always talk about consequences and sequences. What's the consequence for people not overcoming this imposter syndrome? How does it impact them negatively?
I think, truthfully, one of the things that they will forever become too aware of is this fear that they carry around with them. So sadly, they are more likely not to step up. They won't take a risk. They might not go for that bigger job or ask for more money for the role they're in, or maybe go for a particular project that would shine the spotlight on them. Their perception of themselves is a bit mixed up, and therefore they view the things they do and say too acutely as well. They're shining too rough a spotlight on that rather than a loving light. So everything they do or say is under scrutiny, when in actual fact other people aren't anywhere near as in tune to what they're doing and saying as they feel that they are. So they also become very self-conscious. So the impact of this is rather more to do with a level of sadness or disappointment that they carry around for too long, and this is a random or arbitrary statement, but for more than they really ought to, for more than they could do, and more perhaps than the situation deserves. So it's so worthwhile working on yourself and your view of yourself. But again, they're a bit black and white. It doesn't mean that you now have to start thinking, I am perfect, I get everything right. It's not that polarized. It's a step-by-step process that you start to attack. And that's the best thing to do.
What are the rewards of overcoming the imposter syndrome? So there's consequences for failing to act on it, but there's got to be some big rewards for overcoming the problem. What are you seeing with your clients when they overcome that imposter syndrome? What starts to happen to their career? What starts to happen to their business?
Right. If you're running a business, you start to see more opportunities come in. Instead of seeing them as fear-based, scary, oh, do I really want to do that? Could I do that? They will take one. Maybe it's a low-hanging fruit. Maybe it's a slightly bigger one. Maybe they'll share it with the rest of the team better. Maybe they will realize that they're not the only decision maker within the business. And actually, if they share it, they've shared the load and it feels less scary anyway. So something tips in their favor. They start to get more business, or they start to see things improve. And this would be the same if you're an individual. You start to feel better about yourself. You're not getting up every day, as you and I are incredibly fond of attacking, with this negative thinking, this negative expectation. You start to view yourself more positively. I used an expression with a client only the other day. She was continually self-critical, and I gently said to her, look, what does a tree need in order to be able to grow? And she paused and kind of thought about it and said, well, water. I said, yes, water and sunlight. You're acting like the dog that's coming along and weeing on the tree. This does not make any sense. And she kind of looked at me and went, oh, you're right. And it was so easy as soon as she could picture it. Well, I don't want to do that. I said, no, how is it going to grow? I'm not saying it's going to die, but it's certainly not going to grow. So, I think I think it was just a really simple analogy. And that's the truth of it. Free yourself of this and you free yourself of some stuff that you've been carrying around with years that can really only improve your lot.
100%. Now, if I can backtrack for a moment, you mentioned also some emotions as well. We heard fear. We heard a little bit of sadness. What are the cocktail of emotions that come along with imposter syndrome? Because people might be trying to self-diagnose themselves right at the moment. Well, is this happening to me? What emotions would people feel as they experience the imposter syndrome?
I think the biggest one is really related to disappointment. You get disappointed in life, you get disappointed in things that you think you've done, you feel a level of disappointment in the choices that you're making now or are likely to do in the immediate future. I think the point that we really want to make, if I may, is that this can be changed. This is not a given. It is not in your DNA. You did not inherit this when you woke up or were born. You have developed a series of habitual patterns. And as Daniel and I are very fond of talking about, they become your beliefs. This doesn't make the belief right. This doesn't make it fact. This does not make it true. Now, that's not meaning to imply everything you think is wrong. I'm merely saying that you start to break down those thoughts, and you and I have different therapies and models and processes for doing that. And this is very much the reason why we work so well when you came on my podcast, didn't we? We really make sense. And I think people need us because they get stuck or trapped. And it can be in the form of their head in thoughts and processes and habitual ways of thinking. And it's those habits that become beliefs. And we need to break some of those habits. And you can do that.
Three things we look at in our community. We look at influence, impact, and income. Is there any connection between overcoming imposter syndrome and unleashing a new income level? Have you seen the connection there at all? Have people let go of their self-limiting beliefs, their fears, their doubts? They've got rid of that imposter syndrome and then they've had a promotion. They've been able to increase sales. Have you seen a connection there between overcoming imposter syndrome and unleashing a new income level?
Yes, a direct one. And that's mostly because it's in the asking. They either ask for the business if they're a self-employed person, or they will ask for the opportunity, or they'll ask for a new role. And they will have the language or the wherewithal to commit. Sometimes we struggle because the idea of doing something is more scary or more overwhelming than the reality of it. But the idea to an imposter syndrome experience is so scary that it puts them off doing it. So when you break that habit and that habitual link or connection, you start to help them go out there with a better sense of themselves, even if it's just the lowest hanging fruit as your first step. And I'm a very strong believer it also improves your influence, because who you're going to be able to influence, you start to appreciate and you start to respect. There will be people out there who want to hear from you. Not all of these people you imagine who don't want to hear from you. So you factor in the better stuff and the positive stuff rather than the negative as your starting block. That's what sends you out there with a better frame of mind. That produces better results.
I said to one of my clients once, I said, how many times a week do you drive past McDonald's? And he says, I've got to drive past 20 of them every single day. I said, when you drive past them the next day, is McDonald's still open? He looks at me and he goes, of course. And I said, well, just because you drove past and you didn't buy, they didn't shut down their business. They kept moving forward in life. But eventually, they'll keep their doors open. One day you're going to have to go to the bathroom and you'll sneak in and you'll buy a burger while you're there. And he laughed. And he said, absolutely. And I think what I see as well is that people have this fear of the fear. And it's that secondary fear, and I think that can also be very confusing as they move forward.
I would totally agree. And also, really quickly, it's so tricky for me to say this, but they actually get so used to carrying it around, they've forgotten what it feels like to let it go, and it's almost more scary to let it go. So really, this is where we have to begin.
Imposter syndrome?
Yeah, who am I? And
What's
again,
my
that just
story?
that scares an imposter. Exactly. So this is where it starts to get tricky, and where it is so closely related to self-image and self-confidence. And this is where, if we intervene on any one of those, we can start to influence the levers. It's a bit like a slot machine. You are pulling one of the levers, eventually you'll get all the pairs.
Oh, yeah, and you hit that jackpot, baby. Now, I know that our friends today are going to be inspired by this conversation, and they're going to be reconsidering where they are in their careers and where they are in their businesses. And normally at this stage, what they like to do is they like to take a next step. What's the next step to get in contact with you? Do you have any programs coming up? Do you have any more books coming out? Where can they learn more about you?
Well, that's really great. Thank you. Now, the website, which is www.suefirthltd.com, always has every way of getting in touch with me. And obviously, I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. Now, we've long since had a book, which, if you don't mind me showing you, is available. It's always been available, taking the stress out of leadership.
Put it right up on the screen. Let's see it. There it is.
That's the copy that I've got, which is the one that kind of got drawn out, which is the I think it's a copy, but it's not the kind of proper one, because you can see the cut-off one on the top. We've always had this. We have one which is a bit older, which is More Life, Less Stress. I am genuinely going to be starting a masterclass series. I want to start talking about confidence and about imposter syndrome. They're an hour long. We're very genuine about it. Come join us. I think this could be really helpful to you. It will make a difference, and it will be a starting block. Now, it's not the whole journey. Life is a journey, but it starts the process. Come and find out more about them.
Ladies and gentlemen, what I'll do is I'll put Sue's website. It is SueFirthLTD.com. I'll put that up in the show notes in a few moments. And it is a journey, isn't it? It is a journey. It's not a destination. And remember, we've got to work on this incrementally. And they say inch by inch, it's a cinch, and by the yard, it's hard. But all you've got to do today is to take one idea away from the live stream, and one idea is enough to change your life. You might just say, well, I've been heading down the wrong path. And like our friends in Turkey say, it doesn't matter how long you've been going down the wrong path, turn around and go back. Yep. So one idea is enough to change your life. So Sue, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. It's greatly appreciated. We're going to give you one of those big ones from our community. And ladies and gentlemen, go ahead. I've just put the internet address here, SueFirthLTD.com. Please go and visit. Sue, thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day, and make sure 3 things you've got to work on this year. You've got to catapult your influence, you've got to accelerate your impact, and then you will unleash that new income level. Sue, thank you so much for your time today. Wonderful to see you.
You're welcome, Daniel. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you again soon.